Yo, turn it up now. Let's go. Yeah, it's your boy. Check it, check it.
Episode 4 opens with the tension around Rue reaching a completely new level, and for the first time, it doesn't feel like she can talk or escape her way out of it anymore. The situation with law enforcement becomes the core pressure point of everything she is involved in. What once felt like separate problems in her life are now connecting together into one massive threat that follows her everywhere she goes. Rue is no longer just dealing with personal guilt or emotional conflict. The past decisions she made are now turning into real consequences that carry way outside of her control. The investigation around her activities creates a situation where every word, every move, and every connection suddenly matters. People around her are no longer just friends or enemies in a personal sense, they are now potential risks, witnesses, or threats depending on what they know and what they might say. At the same time, the people she is involved with begin to look at her differently. Trust starts to fade, even from those who once depended on her presence. There is a growing sense that Rue is no longer just part of the situation, she might actually be the center of the problem. And that shift changes everything. When trust disappears in this world, it doesn't come back easily. What makes this even more intense is the feeling that Rue is being pulled in two directions at once. On one side, she wants out. She wants something stable, something real, something that feels like a way forward. But on the other side, her past is tightening its grip on her, refusing to let her move on without consequences. Every attempt she makes to step forward seems to trigger something behind her that pulls her right back in. There is also a growing fear that Rue is being watched more closely than she realizes. Small details around her life begin to feel heavier, like she is constantly under pressure even when nothing is happening on the surface. This creates a psychological tension where she is not only dealing with external danger, but also internal paranoia. She starts questioning what is real, who is loyal, and whether she is already too deep to escape cleanly. And as this pressure builds, it becomes clear that Rue's storyline in this episode is not just about avoiding consequences anymore. It is about survival. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Because the more she tries to move forward, the more the past refuses to stay buried. By the end of this opening phase of the episode, the message is clear: Rue is standing at the edge of a situation that is no longer manageable. And whatever happens next is going to force her into choices she might not be ready to make. While Rue is slowly getting trapped by her past, Cassie is stepping into something even more dangerous, a version of success that doesn't feel like her anymore. Episode 4 pushes Cassie into a completely new direction, where appearance, attention, and influence start to replace everything she once cared about. And the scariest part is that she doesn't fully realize how fast she is changing. Cassie's situation begins with her trying to build something for herself online, something that looks like independence but is actually much more fragile than it seems. At first, it feels like opportunity. A chance to escape insecurity, instability, and the fear of ending up stuck in a life she never wanted. But as the episode progresses, it becomes clear that this path is not as empowering as it looks. Maddie steps into this space in a way that completely shifts the dynamic between them. What starts as guidance slowly turns into control. Maddie begins shaping Cassie's image, her choices, and even how she presents herself to the world. On the surface, it looks like ambition. But underneath it, there is tension, jealousy, and a quiet power struggle forming between them. Cassie, in many ways, becomes a project instead of a person. Every decision about her appearance and public image is influenced by someone else's vision of success. And the more she follows that path, the more she starts losing the sense of who she actually is. There is a subtle but powerful shift happening where Cassie begins to prioritize attention over authenticity. The world around her reinforces this transformation. Validation comes quickly, but it comes with conditions. Numbers, followers, and recognition start to feel like the only things that matter. And with that, Cassie begins to associate her worth with how she is seen rather than how she feels. It's a dangerous mindset, and episode 4 leans heavily into that descent. What makes this storyline even more intense is the emotional contradiction within Cassie. Part of her is clearly uncomfortable with how fast everything is moving. There are moments where hesitation shows through, where it feels like she knows something is off. But at the same time, the fear of going back to where she was before pushes her forward anyway.
Maddie's influence also carries an unspoken tension.
It's never fully clear whether she is helping Cassie succeed or shaping her into something she can control. That ambiguity creates a constant sense of instability between them.
Every interaction feels like it could shift from support to manipulation at any moment.
By the end of this part of the episode, Cassie is no longer just experimenting with a new lifestyle. She is being reshaped by it. And the further she goes, the harder it becomes to tell whether she is chasing success or being consumed by it. As episode 4 pushes forward, the pressure around Rue doesn't just increase from one direction, it multiplies. What starts as personal consequences quickly turns into a full network of suspicion, where almost everyone connected to her begins to look at her differently. It's no longer just about what she has done, but about what people believe she might do next. The people around Rue begin shifting their behavior in subtle but important ways.
Conversations feel shorter. Trust feels thinner. Even silence starts to feel meaningful. In a world like this, distance is never random. It usually means fear, doubt, or preparation for something worse. And Rue is right in the center of that shift without fully controlling it. At the same time, higher-level forces in her world begin tightening their grip. There is a growing sense that Rue is no longer just a participant in events, she is now being observed as a risk factor. Every connection she has becomes a potential point of exposure. Every mistake she made in the past starts to resurface like evidence that was never truly gone. What makes this situation even more intense is how isolated Rue begins to feel within it. Even when she is surrounded by people, there is a sense that she is standing alone inside a system that is slowly closing in. The pressure is not loud or explosive at first. It is quiet, controlled, and constant. And that makes it even more dangerous. At the same time, there are signs that loyalty around her is weakening. People who once seemed aligned with her goals begin to act more cautiously, as if protecting themselves has become more important than standing with her. In this kind of environment, loyalty is not broken all at once.
It fades, piece by piece, until there is nothing left to hold on to.
Rue's internal state mirrors this external collapse. There is confusion, stress, and a growing awareness that her options are shrinking.
Every decision feels heavier because the consequences are no longer theoretical.
They are immediate.
And she is starting to understand that she cannot control how others interpret her actions anymore. This is where the emotional tension of the episode really sharpens.
Because Rue is not just dealing with danger, she is dealing with perception.
And in her world, perception can be just as destructive as reality. One wrong assumption, one misunderstanding, or one piece of information landing in the wrong place could change
everything instantly.
By the end of this section, it becomes clear that Rue is no longer navigating a situation she can manage step by step. She is inside a collapsing structure of trust, safety, and control. And as that structure weakens, the question is no longer whether she can fix things, but whether she can survive what is already in motion. By the time episode 4 reaches its midpoint, the tension that has been building in silence finally breaks into full chaos. Everything that was unstable starts collapsing at once, and the world around Rue, Cassie, and the others turns into something far more dangerous and unpredictable. What was once emotional pressure and psychological stress suddenly becomes physical threat and immediate danger. A key location in this episode becomes the center of everything going wrong.
What starts as tension in the background quickly escalates into a situation where control is completely lost.
The energy shifts from planning and manipulation to panic, confusion, and survival.
People are no longer thinking ahead, they are reacting moment to moment, trying to stay safe in an environment that is no longer safe at all.
The atmosphere changes instantly when outside forces begin to interfere. What looked like internal conflict within the group becomes something much larger and more violent. Masks, fear, and sudden movement turn the space into a place where no one is fully in control anymore. The sense of order completely disappears, replaced by chaos that spreads faster than anyone can respond to. In the middle of this breakdown, different characters are forced into situations they cannot escape. Some are caught off guard, some try to stay calm, and others completely panic as events spiral beyond their control. The episode makes it clear that in moments like this, status, plans, and confidence mean nothing. Only survival matters. At the same time, Rue's position becomes even more unstable. The chaos around her doesn't solve her problems.
It multiplies them.
Instead of finding clarity, she is pushed deeper into a situation where every direction feels dangerous. The environment she is in is no longer just emotionally heavy, it is physically unpredictable, and that changes everything about how she has to think. Cassie's storyline also intersects with this rising chaos in a way that highlights how far she has drifted from her original self.
Her focus on image and validation feels distant compared to the reality unfolding around her.
There is a sharp contrast between how she wants to be seen and what is actually happening in the world around her, creating a sense of disconnect that becomes harder to ignore. Meanwhile, other supporting tensions explode at the same time. Conflicts that were previously subtle or controlled suddenly become active threats.
Trust breaks faster. Alliances shift instantly. And every decision made in this environment carries consequences that cannot be undone.
What makes this section of the episode so intense is the speed at which everything falls apart.
There is no slow warning, no chance to fully prepare.
It all happens in waves, one after another, until the situation becomes unrecognizable compared to where it started.
By the end of this chaos-driven sequence, nothing feels stable anymore. The episode makes it clear that the characters are no longer just dealing with personal problems or emotional struggles.
They are now inside a collapsing system where control has been lost entirely, and whatever happens next will not just change relationships, but potentially change everything going forward. As the chaos settles, Episode 4 doesn't give anyone a clean reset. Instead, it leaves behind damage everywhere. What was once controlled, planned, and carefully managed is now scattered into consequences that no one can fully take back.
The aftermath is not calm.
It is tense, uncertain, and filled with questions that no one is ready to answer.